All right, we're back for another half an hour. We've got about 20 minutes left before we break for the B230 transit, right? We're going to go there. We are COMP1006. That's Intro to Web Programming with PHP. And it's hard because this stuff is not, it's also messy because it's an embedded language. So some of it is, when you look at it, the part of the challenge with PHP is what's it doing, right? What's it doing? So if we go back to PHP Storm, I put everything up on GitHub so far. I've been able to send stuff, but how am I sending it and how is it going to be received? I'm not using any kind of method of sending this information over. And when I go there, notice if I was to send it this way, and again, this is a negative. I want to show you the negatives about this. Security-wise, if I go to the site, okay, and if I'm going to click on it for a second, you can see that I get this, but when I hover over it and I send it over, even if there's a page, and there is a page now, I get this information. And maybe I don't want to get that information. Maybe I want to hide this information. And so we can use a form for this, but the form syntax is pretty messy. It's like we have to include, yeah, I know. It's like we have to include a little form within each cell, right? Okay, so let's talk about forms. First of all, you have to know HTML syntax a little bit to understand, right? So if we go back, remember each TD, table data, is actually a cell. This is a cell, right? It's a cell in my table. And if you actually look at it for a second, the table that we have, here's our table. So this is the first cell in the first row, well, the second row. First row is our header row, right? So this is our first cell. Each cell is representing a TD. So if I actually look at, if I do an inspect, and I go to, and if I go back here, and if I look at this cell data, right? So if I open up the body tag, and I look at the div tag, and as I inspect in here, and I go to the row, okay, and I go to this part, and I'm into the table elements, and I go to my T, this is my T body, and inside there, there's table rows. There's my first table row. Take a look. Here's my second one, right? Now it tells you a bunch of information. If I open this up, you can see that I got in each one, I've got my table header, and I can go through and kind of go through each one of these things. This is what it does when we set up a table. Also, in this one, you can see that there's actually hard-coded values in here, right? And there is my, each of these cells has different buttons. Okay, so it's like I want to use each of the buttons, both the edit button and the delete button, as different form elements. I want to kind of have them as different form elements. So when I do a delete or an add or anything that I'm going to do, no matter what I choose here, if I'm going to do edit, delete, I can do it all in one line if I want. Edit, add, delete, create. I can make a new one. I haven't made a new one yet. How do I make a new one? That's another thing we got to figure out how to do, right? These are all pages we're missing in our table data. And that's why we're going to continue the conversation next week. This week I'm kind of showing you the layout and doing those kind of things. And next week we're going to complete CRUD and talk about authentication. We need to do that because authentication is required for your assignment. All right, so let's get into this now. We should at least complete some of these, right? So I want to make it so that when I click on delete or edit, I want there to be a way of editing or going to my edit page, and I need a page for this, right? Okay, first of all, let's see what we can do to read the data, right? That's the most important. And where does if I echo it, where does it go? If I echo the data, where does it go, right? Echo, remember that's the print statement of PHP. You can also use print if you really want to. But I want to be able to take the data that I'm getting and whatever I'm receiving. So if I click this button, it's getting this, it's going to the page. Notice that I am here, game details PHP. However, when I look at my page right now, my game details page is blank, right? So here's my game details, blank, right? Nothing in here. So what I want to do is somehow receive the data. I want to receive the data. And I'm actually doing a GET request. Even if I'm not really doing anything, I'm getting a GET request, but am I able to receive the data? That's the question, right? Can I look at that data when I go there? So again, if I go back to W3 Schools, and I'm putting this out because there's some really good information up here in terms of form validation and everything else, right? Like, for example, when I do any kind of, so here's my URL, and notice that I'm using the post. I'm going to validate some names. I'm posting a name or whatever. I'm going to use PHP. I can use PHP to do any kind of URL validation or any kind of validation whatsoever. So here's the top of my PHP as an example. And what I want to do is be able to read in. Part of this is the form itself, where I can, kind of use my server, or my request method is equal to a post. I can do that. And if my, or get, and if I can use the $_get method. Remember we talked about this as a super global variable. It was like almost day one we talked about this, right? Our super global variable will be able to read in the information we get from our URL. Okay? Okay. Super global variables. For you guys, if you guys don't know where that is, I know I'm going a little fast, but it's not my fault, I swear, right? I'm just telling you, right? But if you look at some of them, I'm just going to pull up some of these PowerPoints so I can go which one. I can kind of point you to along the way because I want to help. Right? I know this is a lot of information, and this is how PHP is structured. So here's an example of this, right? So this is a PHP file that includes an HTML and embedded PHP, right? So what's happening is, on the top of my PHP, I'm getting the first name and last name. Where is this get accessing the first name and last name? Well, it's getting it from the page header, my URL, right? So that's what we have to do for our document. So I'm going to use this first name get, and this _get variable is called a super global variable. And what it is it's actually a dictionary. It has key value pairs. I'm just reviewing what we talked about before, right? So going back to this, when I go from here, I want to show you this. Here, when I echo this and I go to this website and I use this question mark says, hey, send over this variable called game ID. In fact, if anything, what we should really do, again, being what we are, I should probably do something like make this all one. And I'm telling you this because we're going to have to deal with this later on, right? And we want to make it as simple as possible, game ID, right? Game ID is equal to, and then we're going to put the ID of the game in there. This is going to be transmitted to the top of this page too. It's going to take this information, and when we use the link to go to my game details page, I want to be able to read it in here at the top. And the way to read that is to set up a variable where we say something like the following. Game ID, right, is equal to, and again, $_get, that's a super global variable. And then we're going to get something that says game ID. And I'm not sure if I put game ID. Let me just make sure I do that. Let me go back to this because it's got to match exactly what I put here. Game ID, right? So game ID, okay, that's what this is. And what I want to do is somewhere inside my HTML, I can put a regular HTML in here, right? So all my HTML tags for my form and everything else, let's just put my HTML in place. One thing that I really miss from that's not built in by default with PHP Storm is Emmet. I can't do those crazy, commands. I can't do kind of HTML inside my HTML. I got my head, and next to my head, I got my body. I can't do that correctly. It doesn't work the same, right? Here it worked, but I can't go further than this, right? I also need a doc type. All the same stuff that I need in a PHP doc or a HTML document, I'm going to have the requirement of putting it in here. For now, let's just echo out, and again, in the head of my document, I need a title, right? And my title tag is going to be game details, right? And I can inject the kind of what game it is by reading it. But for now, all I want to do is see, can I get what my game, can I read from my URL what the game ID is? If I can, I'm in business, because that means I can use that value to pull the database, look at that ID, and get information from that and load it into my page, right? Okay, if I can't, then I got to use a form. So this is the first thing. So here's my body, and inside my body tag, we're just going to put in an echo. So we're PHP. Oops. PHP. Come on, Tom. And inside my PHP tag, we're going to echo the name of our game ID, right? I want to put that in there. So that's what I want to kind of print out. I want to put this inside my body tag. So if I can do this, and if I just says 1, 2, 3, that's all I'm looking for. We're in business. We're beautiful. We're golden. Let's try this out. So again, I'm going to go back to this page. I'm going to go back, refresh. Hopefully it'll work. Yay. I click this. And if I go here, I get 1. That's nice, right? If I click this one, I should get 2. That means I'm getting the value, and I'm using the super global variable get. Although on the top of my details here, I can see a link. I can actually save this link and get details, my ID for that particular game. If I want to suppress this, I need to use the form and do a post request, right? And any kind of processing that you want to do that's secure, you want to use a post request. If I do a GET request, I show my details on the URL, all right? And that's the difference in terms of some of the differences between a post and a GET. Okay, this is golden. We're fantastic. We're in business because now that I got this, I can repeat what I'm going to do, right? But first, we need to set up some structure in our form because our form is pretty empty. Let's use what we have already to set things up. I'm going to go to my index.php and borrow some stuff, like all of this stuff. I don't want to do all this again. So my head of my document, oh man, hey, wouldn't it be grand? Wouldn't it be fantastic, instead of setting this up all the time, that I had a file called header.php that I loaded in that included all this stuff, right? As opposed to me having to put this stuff every single time at the top of my page. Might be a good idea. I'm going to talk about that next week, right? Where we can report. I don't want to blow you away right now because it'll be really bad. But I want to think about how I can split off my files, create partial files, right? Where I hold my header and my footer information in different files, and only have my content files that are the ones that I want to smash together on the server side to create my final file, right? And we'll talk about how to do that later on. But for now, what I want you to think about is, wouldn't it be nice? And the answer is it would be, and we do have a solution for that. So I'm going to grab all this stuff for now, and I'll actually grab it all the way to from my body tag to my head, like this. Copy. I'm going to go back to my game details, right? And instead of all this being here the way it is, I'm just going to copy this in, paste it for now. We're going to fix the rest of the body tag later on. So I got this. This is good because guess what? I don't want to copy all this stuff out again. And this will be called game details, right? This is the title tag. So game details page, right? And then inside the bottom of my body, wouldn't it be nice if I had the bottom of this other stuff down here? I don't want to do all this again. So I'm going to grab all this stuff, copy it, and go back to my game details and paste it. And so now I have I've set up my structure for my pages. I'm copying, right? This is bad. And whenever you see me copying stuff, that's a good opportunity for us to reduce, reuse code, and PHP and other frameworks allow us to do that. Yeah.
What's an easier way, not a way, but what's an easier option for PHP, for backend?
Then PHP?
Easier and more.
This is the easiest you're going to ever get.
Okay.
There is no more easier than PHP. PHP is the easiest backend framework you'll use. Right? That's not an easy backend framework. JavaScript is going to be a pain and the sphincter, right? Okay, let's continue, right? And I apologize for that, but let's continue. So here we got this, right? And if I go to, and by the way, I know this because I've done many sites like this. I need a container tag, I need a row tag, I need all this stuff to kind of set up my tables. And this is good structure. So I'm going to kind of take all this stuff, right? And I need to take all this stuff too. So I've gotten this piece, right? My games list. And I don't care about my table, but I need all this stuff except for my table data. So in fact, why don't I just grab everything and delete? It's far easier to destroy than to build, right? So I'm going to grab almost the entire page here, which is what I've done. I'm just showing you the piece parts that I can use. So I'll go back to my game details, and inside there, paste. Now I want to get rid of this for each loop and the table data, which is from this up to here. Okay, here it is. And it's not a games list. This is my details, right? So this is game details. And then inside here, what I want to have is a little form. I need a form here, right? And my form is going to have the name of my game. I don't care about my ID. That can be a hidden field, right? But I need my game, my name. I'll put it in there for now. Name, my cost, right? I need the things that I'm asking for right now. And I think I asked for, what are the three things I put? I think cost and rating or something like that. Let me take a look. ID, name, and cost. Those are the things the three things I want, right? So that's what I want to output. And bear with me while I do this, and then we'll end this part, and then I'll run away. Actually, I might have to run away earlier because we're almost 10-2, and I'm timing out. So again, here, what I want to do is look for a Bootstrap class that can help me out, which is going to be my, again, it's a form class. That's going to be in the CSS side. So any basics is on the CSS side. Here's my form. And what I want to do is, here's a great example of a form that I can use from scratch. So I'm going to copy this whole thing. And that's why Bootstrap is good. It's just code examples that I could use. I'm going to paste that in. But I don't need all of this, right? Here's my email and password. I don't care about this. I want to and all this kind of stuff. I'm going to modify this whole form, right, so that it shows different things. Just to show you what it does for now, to show you what it looks like. If I run my code, so if I go back to here and refresh, right, and I refresh this and go to here, I'll get this, right? Didn't take long. What I'm going to do here is not this, not username and password. By the way, this is very familiar to what you need, username and password for your assignment. But what I'm going to do is, and I fully encourage you to use tools like Bootstrap to help you code faster, right? Yes?
I have one question about this.
Tell me.
Okay, do we have to link a different username to a different?
No, that's a bonus.
Just one?
Yes.
Okay.
Any user can log in and see everybody's to-do list for now, right?
So we have to create different usernames then? Or just one?
One is fine. As long as you tell me what it is and I log in, I'm good.
All right.
Imagine if it's your own personal to-do list. But if you had more than one, then yes. Right? For now, let's pause. I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to go over to B230 and continue. If you guys want to join me, you're welcome to. If you don't want to join me and you want to say goodnight, see you later, I'm going to continue recording later. Okay?
My question is,